welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're joining us again, and welcome if you're joining us for a replay. And regardless of when you're joining us, thank you so much for tuning in to check us out on today's topic, which is returns on energies and engagement. And I really want to thank you for joining us. Let us know where you're from. Let us know a way that we can help you. Let us know somebody we can introduce you to. And one of the things I love as we're joining lives, and I so appreciate the reminder to turn down my own volume, a real reminder. Solopreneur today. Thank you, Catherine Lee, for every time that I never have to worry about an extra set of controls. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is how we are, when we're generating and trying to create lasting relationships, how are we creating impact? How do we measure it? When in school, they mentioned ROI, which was return on investment. I've heard of return on engagement before, but I had never applied it myself till probably about 4 or 5 years ago. In the process of trying to build relationships, of looking at those intersections. Hey, Lachelle, how are you? Of trying to check out those intersections as we approach them and we're trying to navigate, whether we're solopreneurs, whether we're team leaders, whether we're an employee, we're all approach how we're building and creating lasting relationships and collaborations. We do it differently. Lachelle is a fabulous, fabulous example. And check her out at collaboration over competition for a hashtag or America's Super Mom. And one of the reasons I love mentioning Lachelle is I met Lachelle at an intersection. And since we've met, really taken a deep dive with collaborators like Lachelle, with clients, with teams to discuss how we're building our relationships, how we're creating our teams, how we approaching these intersections, who maybe is a joint venture partner, who maybe is a good sponsor for us, a co-leader. And there's so many choices as we're building relationships. But I'd love to know, how do you measure them? I mentioned return on investment before, and it's something, we think about a lot. We've heard it a lot. And a reminder, this one's for you. And thank you so much for joining us as we're having these discussions. Hey, Carla, how are you? Welcome. Welcome back, ladies. And so, returns on energies and engagement are two of the tools in the toolkit that I have used myself and helped other clients develop ways to use them. And they're two tools that kind of help increase impact. And here's how I'd love to know how you measure your outreach and your resources. Maybe you got a CRM and you're looking for a certain number of new clients, or you're looking for a certain number of new team members, or you're tracking people who came to your webinar, or to your brick and mortar store, or to your live event. But to think of the two sides of it, the engagement side, we measure differently. And I'm in creator mode on LinkedIn now. And I want to thank Thought Leadership Branding Club and Social Sales Link for inspiring me to do that. In the process, there's all these vanity metrics. There are impressions. There are engagements. There are analytics on how many times somebody's viewed a video. And we all know the reactions, the likes, the emojis that we may receive, whether somebody's leaving a comment or they're doing a drive-by and they're just popping by our post. But those two ways of energies and engagement, how you define them in terms of your process of, as Celia and I appreciate her help with this one today. We're all trying to build relationship capital. And how we measure it. So the engagement part, I was a live networker. I would attend a lot of weekly networking events, a lot of chamber events, membership associations, presentations, support clients at their event. Lots and lots of engagement. At the same time, the energies part, that kind of was behind the scenes. I could measure it in how it affected the introvert when she got home. Or I learned at clients' events while engaging to maximize my energy by helping my clients start to follow up during their live events. It then became a practice. I'm able to do the same at my own in a good way. It helped me test the tools and the toolkits that I'm loving to share with you today. If we think about the returns, whether they're ways we measure them in communities we create, in communities where we're leaders, in communities where we're members, or maybe we're the volunteer, or if you're the sponsor, you're kind of the stakeholder. So there's so many different ways to measure them. But I'd love to break it down to three different ways. If you use returns on energies and engagement to generate momentum that you're able to measure, whether it's attendees at a live or virtual event, people who click through, like Carla's got an amazing special offer she's sharing today. Lachelle has a fabulous book that she just released with an amazing workbook in it. Lachelle, if you're still with me, drop that in the chat so that people can find your amazing book. I'm really enjoying it. And she's doing master classes, and we got a signed copy. But if you're sharing something and however you're measuring it personally, we don't always share that with others. And to generate momentum, we need to. We need to make it narrow. As we narrow our focus, we need to personalize it. And it's our outreach. It's not necessarily methods or systems that we share with others, unless they're team members, employees, virtual assistants. And in some cases, we're sharing them in different ways with our boss. The other part of generating momentum is something I'm now calling sustainable energy. If we don't have the energy from start to finish on a project with the times to kind of check in and catch our breath in between, we're not necessarily measuring the time accurately that we're spending engaging others. Is it the time that you get in your car to drive to the chamber event? Did you include the time that you're planning to attend the event? Maybe some research that you're planning on doing before you go to the event? The time you took to pack stuff in your car, to prepare a team member, to practice an elevator pitch, maybe to update social media. These are all things, if we kind of think of the impact and we measure them later, we can really measure the returns on them. We can determine where we want to spend more energy and elements that we want to include in the engagement. And the reason why I started paying more attention to them was I planned a multi-day event. It was a live event and it was a virtual event. It was a hybrid. And I'm really grateful for sitting down to do the planning because I'm so not an event planner, although I am an event success coach. But I sat down with a dear friend of mine who's kind of my education specialist. She's my lean office buddy. And I always check with her for the alignment. Does it make sense start to finish? And before this multi-day event, I also checked with a new friend who was a Six Sigma. So these are the organization ladies, the structure ladies, the framework ladies, and I really, really appreciated their gems. They helped me understand in the process of planning for my event, I needed to think of how to measure not just seats at each event, not just what we were feeding our guests or serving our guests, but what was going into each element or segment. And I learned after this event to really measure my returns on energies and engagement. Marcia McCrae helped me start planning this event, and I had been planning this event for about 19 months. So it was really complex, a lot of moving parts, a lot of angles, and really the beginning of understanding now about building larger event support teams. And in the process, was really lucky to hit about 14 of the 18 goals I set. But the things that I learned were to really focus on the energies and the engagement. So, my first live kind of hybrid event, I was off camera. I never appeared on the camera. I focused on engaging my live guests. I focused on engaging my virtual guests. They were with me on Zoom. And I never appeared once on camera. It was a 5-hour event with a lot of moving parts. And I noticed that day when I listened to the playback, I said, wow, you welcomed everyone live and virtually, but you never once said, hey, I'm Mel. This is my event. I never made myself part of the video. I learned that day when I planned the event. I knew that day also, I was there also as an attendee, as a solopreneur, to kind of soak up the gems from Be Visible social media. What did these two events teach me? They taught me to really narrow the focus, to kind of bridge my big gaps on how I connect quickly with live and virtual guests. And there's something, if I could leave you with that thought, it's really, those two events really helped me fine tune how I measure it. And now I share returns on energies engagement with anybody who's willing to listen, who's trying to build relationships. Because I had sponsors, I had fellow presenters, I had someone helping us with video, someone helping me feed guests, serve guests, make sure they had beverages. We had volunteers, very, very grateful for them. And at the time, that live feed was probably my precursor to a podcast. I didn't really that time. The one part I really missed also was interviewing all of the talented presenters so people would have a chance to meet them shortly before that. We had like a meet and greet. But when you're focusing in, whether it's an event, whether it's in person, we need to really fine tune and select, in this case, at a time period that I measured the resources that I was spending. I was able to tell you later how much time I spent planning, how much time I spent engaging, how much time I spent on social media. None of these things were things that I was an expert in. And I learned also as the process to really ask for more help. So if you're able to communicate some of the elements in the returns that are really important with you, to you, for your organization, for your brand, for your team, in ways that others really clearly get it, it'll help you take really well supported steps at your pace into the beat you want to build at a level that I now call a sustainable energy level. We need to manage and kind of keep an eye on our power levels. And I love Catherine's comment. And Catherine, thank you so much for a gem. Catherine, I'm a spreadsheet girl too. And I tried using a time tracker. It was really challenging using it for events because I found because I'm not the event planner, I kind of had the firefly system of like, it was hard for me to measure where I was spending my time and my resource because I didn't track it back in a CRM to an individual person I was having a conversation with, to an amount of time, because the time we take to nurture a relationship, to cultivate a relationship, to really measure those things. But really, if you think of elements to include as you're thinking of your engagement, the engagement part may be easier for you. You can think of personnel, you can think of productivity, you can think of networking, social media, conversations, emails that you're creating, outreach, research time, and response rates as part of the engagement. But the energy is also part of the engagement. And that's where I think it gets a little complicated for many of us as we're planning it. We don't separate it out. Catherine's probably really good at separating things out because organization is one of her strengths. The thing I found in terms of energy was that was where to really try and find a way to kind of maximize the productivity. It's one of the reasons why I'd start on outreach or follow up while I was at a live event. As an introvert, I would volunteer for check in. For clients, I volunteer to do it. I've checked in as many as 300 or 400 people for an event and then done the same on the back end as people were leaving. Maybe we gave them their thank you gifts or an opportunity to purchase books for an author or to sign up for another program. But for you, whether you're offering products, services, packages, or both, breaking down the energy part into your outlays, into what you're evaluating, what you're selecting. Um, and it took me some time to build this in, but that selection process, I really had to refine it to kind of figure out where I wanted to spend my energy. And that part for you, think of it as your cadence. So you kind of your beat, your timing, your pace or your rhythm. And think of the resources part. On the other end, think of the intersections you're approaching, the teams or the communities you're trying to build. And what I love is Carla has shared her package. So Carla's got a Grateful Gold booster sale. She's part of multiple virtual experts who are providing businesses with some fantastic services, great offers. And it's called a goal booster. I love that the word grateful kind of precedes that, Carla. And thank you so much for dropping that in the chat so others can kind of check this out. So, Carla, for those who are watching this later on a replay, please also drop in ways for them to get in touch with you after the 14th of November so they can learn about your fantastic services. And really want to thank you for being a wonderful part of my Be Visible with Bell team. The thing that I want to close with as we're checking out is one, it's about generating momentum and narrowing your focus. It's about sustainable energy for you, or what I like to call elevate your blend. It's mixing elements like I was saying I had to do before of live and virtual events. What did I do for each? Kind of where was I going to put the focus? And the third part would be selecting the time period over which you want to measure your returns. As a startup, I'd allow longer time to measure them. As a team leader, I'd measure them individually and then set up a time for your team to measure them collectively. As if you're onboarding employees or team members, also make sure that your new people who are coming in have some time with someone who kind of treats these as their like key performance indicators and who can show them how they measure them personally. I use a proficiency planner, so it's not dated and you can kind of pop into it at any time for any project. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today for Returns on Energies and Engagement. And thank you again for joining us for I'm Possible Live. Looking forward to continuing our discussions on impact measurement a little bit later this month with ROO, which is Return on Opportunities and Objectives. And if there's ever something I can do to help you in this process as you're measuring and trying to figure out ways to generate impact, and let's connect. And I hope you have a magnificent day. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, and please stay in touch. Take great care.